Good afternoon, Team Krulak community, and welcome back to we got a rapid fire back-to-back episode of Down the Rabbit Hole on the Russia-Ukraine war here. And we're very fortunate to be able to offer this. It's sort of a high tempo, unique opportunity because our guests today are actually on location, certainly much closer than we are right now to where the conflict is. And in their travels, they can share some firsthand perspectives from what they've been seeing over there. So as always, I'm Major Ian Brown, Operations Officer at the Krulak Center. And we have Dr. Yuval Weber, our Russia SME here, as always, with us as well. And then today we're fortunate to be joined by two Team Krulak members who one of whom we've seen before, but the other, this is his first time. So we'll sort of, get him in, dip the toe in here first before we throw him in the deep end. But it's great that we got a wide swath of Team Krulak here. So our first guest here is Dr. Amin Tarzi. He's been the director of Middle East Studies at Marine Corps University for certainly longer than the Krulak Center has been around. He's been sharing his perspective on aspects of the Middle East and Mediterranean for many years here to the benefit of our students. We've also got Maj John Behrmann, who is our director for the Center for Regional and Security Studies, and they are both live with us from Athens, Greece, as part of work-related travels over there. But Dr. Tarzi, he was actually in Turkey shortly before he was over here in Greece. And so he's, like I said, firsthand accounts and perspective from a key player here who sort of straddles both camps in the ongoing war in Ukraine. So, gentlemen, great to have you all again. Yuval, great to see you for the second time in 48 hours here. Can't get enough of it. It's great stuff. So welcome, and Yuval, I'll turn it over to you to sort of set the stage here with our guests.
So great. So thank you, Ian, and yasas to you guys in Greece. So Amin, take it away. So obviously, for those viewers listening, Dr. Tarzi has a wealth of experience in the security issues of broader Europe and Eurasia. And obviously the area around Turkey, Black Sea, Eastern Mediterranean is a topic of special expertise for Dr. Tarzi. So I just want to say, in effect, how's your trip going with a special emphasis on what have you learned, particularly in your time in Turkey, on how Turkey is handling the war in Ukraine? And obviously there's been a lot going on. Part of it is Turkey closed the Bosphorus Straits to Russian warships, which has prevented Russia from doing naval resupplies, which has kept Ukraine safe to some extent. But also Turkey is buying stolen Ukrainian grain. So it's going in a couple different directions. Turkey under Erdogan, as always, is following, in fact, an independent foreign policy. So what have you learned recently, and how have you assessed the security around the region has changed in the past several months of this conflict?
Thank you very much, Dr. Weber. I think we are past Kalisera, we are Kalinikta. It's night here. For both Turkey and Greece, the country we are in right now, I think for Turkey much more. So we start with Turkey, as your question was there. They have been handling the war in Ukraine in a trying to, first and foremost, this is important, is to get benefits from it as much as they can. You mentioned the fact that they invoked the Montreux Convention. Here, Turkey shows to the Western alliance that they are a responsible ally. Here, they can do that. More importantly, not only are they responsible, they can show the Western alliance, specifically NATO, what an asset it is that Turkey has based on the Montreux Convention, that it actually can, has the right to block once a war is declared. There's a lot of loopholes, but the fact that they can do that and make the Black Sea inaccessible, new material coming in. This also means, of course, that NATO cannot bring in ships, let's say, to a NATO ally there, but at least the Russians cannot supply their ships. So it shows that Turkey cannot be overlooked. Not only that it is the second largest army within NATO, it has a strategic position that is very unique. And this is, without saying it, it is being emphasized on the position of Turkey geopolitically. Also, it shows responsibility. So this is one. You mentioned the issue of grain. Turkey is highly dependent on food products, specifically grains from there, but also in fuel products. The fuel is coming mainly from Russia. For Turkey to right now stop receiving those supplies would be very detrimental, given the fact that Turkey has an inflation rate that officially is one thing, but at the bazaars, let's put it that way, the word is 70% plus. When you have an inflation that high, the value of the Turkish lira has fallen. Right now, yesterday it was about $17 to a lira. I remember several years ago where it was almost 1-to-1. So that's a major drop of a currency with the Turkey. So Turkey cannot afford to join into a sanctions regime, if you would, as countries that are less dependent on on Russian supplies are. So, but beyond that dependency or interdependency, I do not think that the Turkey wants to cut off relationship with Russia. As I left Istanbul this morning, there was an airfloat plane there. The Russians there, not as much as Turkey wants. Turkey is highly dependent on Russian tourists. Turkey wants them back. Russian tourists are good for Turkey for many reasons. Number one, Turkey has removed all visas for the past few years for Russians to come in there. And Russians are known to spend a lot of money. They're buying property. When they're there, they spend a lot of money. They're not the tourists on the cheap. When they come in, they actually lavish themselves into all the luxuries that Turkey can offer. Them not being there, I was in a resort town in the south of Turkey for a few days of personal vacation. And what I was hearing from the hoteliers, I said, what is going on? I said, well, the Russians are not here, therefore the hotel prices have gotten cheap. Airbnb has stopped because Airbnb was what the Turks themselves would take, and the hotels in the high end would go to the Russian and the Ukrainian too, but mainly Russian, but some Ukrainian. And they said now the Russians are not coming, so the hotels have gotten so cheap that the Turks are actually preferring to go to the hotels. These are things that you hear in the bazaar, in the streets. And the Airbnbs are not coming in. So these are direct economic effects at a time where the Turkish economy is bad. On top of all of that, Turkey has an upcoming election, a presidential election, in a time that President Recep Erdogan may think he is vulnerable. Because when you look at his almost 20 years in power, where he has scored the highest is on the economy. And that is right now not paying off. And he senses a vulnerability. So he cannot afford right now to go into this election period with a rampant inflation. Let's not forget again, I'm throwing all of this to see that it's very convoluted. Turkey is also selling one of the more effective weapons. I know it's symbolic, but the Bayraktar is being sold. Symbolically, I think the company even gave or donated one to Ukraine as a gift. So they're trying to play both sides. The question here is, how long can Turkey play this without having to choose one side or being forced to choose one side? And secondly, because of what they're happening in NATO right now, with Turkish opposition to the application of Finland and Sweden, is this playing it too hard? These are questions that I think for Russia, that this is very, very music to Russia, Moscow's ears when they see Turkey opposing the application of Finland and Sweden. So how long can Ankara play this balancing act, if you would, or playing on both sides is important. and I think that would determine Turkey's either an effective power playing the right way, and of course looking at its own interest, or Turkey faltering and finding itself in a bind. And that I think, regardless of what really happens on the ground in Ukraine, as far as the war is continuing, I think for Turkey, that time period is in the next 6-7 months, if the war doesn't end by that time. There's more, but I don't want to keep on talking in a monologue. So I kind of threw a lot on Turkey, but there's many things churning right now, and then of course there's Turkey-Greece issue, which is important, and Russia's role there. But I will leave those for later discussions.
Okay, so there are many interesting points in there, and so just one thing to pause is to think at 70% inflation. Just think, here in the U.S., President Biden is struggling in the 7 to 8% inflation, and this becomes like a topic of conversation. 70% inflation we're not at Weimar Germany levels, but it seems to be one of the exits along that particular highway. And so one can then imagine if that crushes basically the Turkish economy, Turkish people, businesses, their ability to import things. And so therefore, whatever does come from Ukraine, they're definitely going to snap it up just to maintain normal living standards. So a question that you raise in terms of Turkish security interests. For Erdogan personally, being the most important person possible, being essentially a veto player, a choke point by himself, is by itself worth something, because it demonstrates that he's able to put Turkey on the international map. You mentioned in terms of NATO, because of this conflict, the security calculus for many states have changed. Finland and Sweden have decided, after decades, if not in Sweden's case, centuries of non-alignment, to officially go for NATO membership. They applied for NATO accession, and ahead of then, and something that we've been tracking for a number of months, their president, President Niinisto, went to every single NATO member and got the buy-in that there was going to be unanimous consent for NATO to accept Finland and Sweden. Finland and Sweden apply, and within NATO parlance, so in NATO, as you know, basically everything is assumed to be already by consent, by unanimous consent, unless someone, quote, breaks the silence. And Turkey informed NATO that it was going to break the silence and veto, or at least not provide consent, for Finland and Sweden to join. From your time there and from your studies across the larger region, can you explain to the greatest extent possible both what were the origins of Erdogan's decision to break the silence, what it is that they're asking for, and basically how do you think this might play out?
Number one, I think, is, you said it, it puts Turkey in a place where Turkey matters. Turkey, in the last several years, has not been very happy by the way it was treated in the EU. They thought they did most of the things that were required, and they were pushed aside, and other countries, which in Turkish perspective were not as ready or admitted, they were pushed by the United States. They believed specifically there was many grievances with the US going back to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. That kind of started it, but what happened in Syria, for Turkey, that was almost the fact that the United States did not understand that YPG, the Syrian Kurds, were the same as the Kurds in Turkey, and basically a terrorist organization. That hit a very raw nerve. So they felt that Turkey was not being listened to or respected. So the NATO, and this is again more from you said what I hear out there. I know exactly what went on in the halls of power, and I know absolutely not. But from what you hear is that the reaction was, and again, in the calculation of President Erdogan, it had many things. One, it brought out the Kurdish question. Are there Kurdish leaders in those countries? Yes, but there are more in other countries in Europe than there are in Sweden and Finland, more important leaders. So, but the fact is, it brings up this idea that Turkey was wronged with the Kurds, that Turkey has a legitimate problem of terrorists that have been killing Turks for several decades, and the PKK is a terrorist organization in most European countries, United States. Yet all these countries looked the other way when the Syrian YPG came in, and here the Turks have a point, a very valid point. There's not much a difference between the two organizations. They didn't show that either when leadership was almost the same. So that putting this issue of Kurds brings about the grievance. It's also how bargaining is happening. Let's not forget that the Director General of NATO already said that despite what you said about the President of Finland, he said that we respect that there are legitimate concerns of Turkey. So they're not dismissing Turkey. That already gives Turkey some currency. What do they want? This, again, the word out there is it is not so much about Kurds. The Kurds brings out a grievance, puts Turkey's concerns, legitimate concerns, I'm quoting now Brussels. Turkey wants something else. Turkey wants concessions, perhaps on the platforms, for example, the advanced F-16s, perhaps. They were not very happy. Again, another thing that is, look, from my perspective, President Erdogan looks at these problems holistically. He doesn't look at them. He looks at them. He remembers them. He remembers the S-400. Everybody says Turkey did wrong. Turkey says, no, we wanted to buy a system, the Patriots, that was not sold to us. We wanted certain systems with it. So they want to be seen as not as a client, but rather as a partner. So now my view is that there may come to a time when this issue of Finland and Sweden comes to a place where a decision has to be made, that Turkey may request one way or the other a concession, could be from the United States, could be holistically from NATO, on may not go to as far as getting back to the F-35, because that would be breaking a lot of rules for the US, but at least on this advanced platform of F-16 or some other sort of air defense. So it gets something. You see, that you have to understand that, in my view, that there is a lot of bargaining issues going on. You bring in the Kurdish issue. That's your grievance that you have hurt by. You get legitimacy from Brussels. Now you come in and say, okay, then in the back doors, you get something else that you have wanted. And then in the election, what you do is you already have said that I talked about the Kurds, which is something he thinks is going to be important for Mr. Erdogan in the election. But then he gets something, if he gets it, a different version of F-16 or something else that he can show that here, Turkey would listen to. He needs to show something beyond the economy, specifically on foreign policy and Turkey's greatness. Turkey looks good, let me tell you. If there's an inflation there, which there is, and it shows, what it does is for Mr. Erdogan, that's very, very bad news. There's a lot of money in Turkey. I mean, you land in Turkish airports. I just landed from Istanbul to Frankfurt. It was Frankfurt that looked like a much lesser, much affluent, much, honestly, I have to say, even much more disorganized. I mean, Turkey is in a very good shape in that sense. Things are working well, but there is very the money in the pocket of the middle class. This is where Mr. Erdogan wanted the elections. Not the elite. The elite is very much with the CHP, which is the Republican Party. the more secular party. It is he wanted with the middle class, which he brought up from oblivion. They are the ones who are hurting. So he has to give him something else. And then if he plays with NATO, Turkey is made to be look more important. And he works with Russia somehow as, offering that he become the peacemaker between Presidents Zelensky and Putin. Even if that doesn't happen, it brings Turkey as a not just as a regional power, but as a very important part of the world community. He has to run on something. I think we have to bring in. Some people may think that the Turkey elections are not legitimate. They are. There's some irregularities. There has been, but elections do matter. And this coming election for him is very, very important. So he has to show something. Economy will not turn around. Whatever happens, Turkish economy in the sense of money in the pocket of the middle class is not going to go high before this election happens. So he has to have some symbolic thing. So think of it that way. I think it begins to make sense.
So in that regard, so you laid out basically a process here, using the, whether you call it plight or struggle against the Kurds, as a wedge issue to demonstrate grievance, and using grievance to then put forth additional demands. From basically your position now in Greece, and German, what have you guys been hearing in terms of the more general, let's say Southeast Europe, but the more general European attitude towards basically Turkey's role in this conflict, but also from, because a lot of people here in the U.S., when they think about NATO, they think about the larger countries to the west. So to the extent that you're getting into it, what is the regional approach, or basically understanding of not just Turkey's behavior, but also the war itself? Because obviously the Black Sea is going to be, is clearly a zone of contestation, and that changes the way that these countries have to conceive of their own security.
I mean, we haven't started our meeting. We just got here to Athens. Tomorrow is what was it?
Tomorrow will be the first day, so we'll probably get a chance to start, getting a better sense of the atmospherics, at least from people that are studying the problem, here in the capital.
You are right that a lot of people out in the US, perhaps, and even in Europe, there are people who look at Turkey as an outlier. Physically, it's out in the east. Some may even see NATO as the same thing that Europeans, if you remember when the application process of Turkey was there, at the time the French president, the former president, Monsieur Sarkozy, almost stated definitely that Turkey would never become a member, no matter what they do, because they're, basically majority Muslim country. Some may say the same thing, that Turkey being a majority Muslim country is not the same as other NATO countries. This will be, of course, something that Russia would love to hold on, if that's possible. Are there capitals in Europe that look at Turkey as not in line with the rest of NATO? I'm sure there are, but talking about this particular capital where we are sitting right now, I would say in NATO, one of the biggest problems right now is beyond Turkey and Turkey's vote or not, this displeasure on Sweden and Finland, is the Greco-Turkish relationship. Right now, it's become very personal between the Prime Minister of Greece, Mr. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and President Erdogan. It also is touching on territory, on sovereignty. If it's not handled well, and if it becomes a issue of political maneuvering for electioneering, it could put NATO in a very precarious position. And again, I keep on bringing Russia here, because for Russia there will be nothing more pleasant in having an intra-NATO conflict, especially if that conflict is not just words, but it actually has some sort of power showing, whether it is over flights or more, or putting beacons on each other's planes and stuff like that. There has been some rapprochement, but those have right now things are not good, specifically after the speech that the Prime Minister of Greece gave at the U.S. Congress. Mr. Erdogan has said publicly he doesn't even know who he is, and he's not going to talk to him. So while that's stated, there is a lot of conversation going on various levels. Greece has taken a very different role. This is something that is very fundamental. Greece, if you recall, was the most pro. I'm talking about NATO expansions during the Cold War. Greece was by far the most, not pro-Soviet Union, but the most lenient country within NATO alliance towards the Soviets. Always was. Everybody talked, the Greeks from the same church group, Greek Orthodoxy, the Russian help in Greek independence in 1821, and so on and so forth. I would say that there is a fundamental change in Greek politics. This is not a prime minister. This is not a trend. If you go to even Prime Minister Tsipras, who was a left wing, or you come to Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who's right, pretty right, maybe middle right, but a little bit beyond middle right, it is almost seamless. Athens has walked away from Moscow. And regardless of the Orthodox, relationship, the history, the Byzantine history, and all of that. And this is significant. I think this is significant. Why is it significant? Because if you're sitting in Ankara, you may think that by now, some people in the West thinks, okay, Greece is now the real flank of NATO. And with Turkey, we just have to deal how we deal with them. They're part of NATO, but they're really, like the EU, they're not really a member. They are a member of NATO. They've been there since 50s, but we don't trust them fully. I think that would be a wrong thing for NATO alliance to look at Turkey as a kind of a rogue or not full member. Unfortunately, sometimes you hear that from Athens' perspective that showcases itself as the true Western. I don't want to say these things. I'm sitting in this country and tomorrow I'm going to be meeting them, but the true Western ally of NATO, and here's Turkey. And by Athens moving away from Moscow, and as I say, in my view at least, this is fundamental. This is not a political trend anymore. It can show that this is now in the West solidly. It's not the Greece of old that had always this kind of a soft side for the Russian. So I think that's something that we need to pay attention to. And the power that plays the most significantly this is the country we go after this as France. The French seem to be playing a much more vocal and active, showing the flag, if you would, on the side of the Greeks. So this is where when you hear President Erdogan talking about them talking thus, he's talking about the French. So I think because we are talking about Russia in this case, for Russia, when they see these rifts coming out, they may look at how to make sure those rifts become wider. And in my view, for us, from the Western perspective, and I'm personally a big fan of NATO as a whole, we ought to look at how to. I know Turkey is not an easy case to handle, but how to manage it to make sure that Turkey doesn't rift away and the Greek-Turkish relationship doesn't come to. I mean, there's always ups and downs, but the ups and downs are verbal and not. They don't create more manifest themselves in any kind of a military. I'm not saying invasion or something, but overflights. There's a lot of overflights over each other's territory, especially Turks are now flying over Greek islands, and that needs to be dealt at the NATO level, and regardless of anything else, because these are two NATO members, they were brought in together at the southern flank in 1952. I think we need to revisit that in leadership. The United States and whoever else wants to lead with us, or somebody else takes the lead, to make sure that this is not pushed aside right now. I see right now in Athens a frustration with Turks, and I see in Ankara almost the Greeks are very weak. We can deal with them. If NATO doesn't want to deal with them, we know how to deal with them. That's not a good thing.
Okay, so I mean, in that regard, when thinking about this war basically crystallizing basically a much more polarized security environment of Athens, not just as a political trend, but as a essentially structural condition moving away from, and Turkey
Yes.
playing a, let's say, more idiosyncratic role as long as Erdogan's in power. What is your sense of how this war, as we're now into the fifth month of it, it'll last for more months, year, who knows how long this will last. So in terms of thinking about what this war has done, clearly it's changing the security considerations for many states. So
Right.
short term, up until the end of this summer, medium term, up to a year from now, long term into the future, how does this war change the provision of security in the Black Sea and in the Eastern Mediterranean?
Uh, let's start with the Black Sea because that's more complicated. Because Turkey has, a key to who goes, who doesn't go, if the war continues, and how they move about the Montreux Convention. I think uh, in our environment, now I come back to our being the PME environment, we need to look more at ways and means of how to look at this legalistically. It's not a very straightforward convention. It was done with a lot of political, political maneuvering, how to make sure the Turks have sovereignty and nobody else, on how to make sure that NATO has a way to maintain security should there be not security of Ukraine, but other NATO members, including Turkey itself, that are littorals of the Black Sea. The other thing in the Black Sea is I don't think Turkey would like to see Ukraine become a non-existent littoral, meaning Odessa falling. What Turkey do militarily, I don't think Turkey will do anything militarily against Russia. I think that's absolutely not going to happen. But I think they are going to make it very hard on Russia within the legal means that they have to deny Russia the power to extend this war from what they have to further west to take over Odessa. Because if Odessa is over, Ukraine becomes a landlocked country, pretty much, and no access to. That changes the whole environment. Then, for Turkey long term, then basically they are dealing with a much stronger Russia and no counterbalancing. I don't think they want that. What can they do with that? I don't know. Overall, Black Sea, beyond these two countries, Russia and Turkey, again, as I say, that it matters whether we outside countries can even bring in supplies. If we can't, there's not much we can do to ensure security other than intelligence or things from the outside, but we can actually bring assets in there. That's a big decision for Turkey. If they decide to change that and allow, then we are talking about a whole different, then we do wargaming and to what assets you put in the Black Sea and whose assets and at what capacity. Now, coming to Eastern Med, I think Eastern Med has more a potential of doing good, because in Black Sea right now, I don't see anything positive happening except Russia not taking over Odessa for the Western perspective. For Eastern Med has positivities. Where are the positivities? Let me start with the negative. The biggest negative is the issue of Cyprus is not dealt with. And I don't think anybody thinks that under the current circumstances, we can solve the divided island, one side like a EU country, a sovereign country, the other side a country that only one country, only Turkey recognizes it, but sits there and it claims its own territorial waters, the northern part of Cyprus. But solving is one thing, managing the conflict is different. How are we going to be able to manage that conflict? And here again, a working relationship between Athens and Ankara is important. Without it, that's not going to be possible. They have to agree, and then the Cypriots can be brought in or not brought into the table. And even there is no guarantee, but at least that's the start. The positives. First of all, there's a lot of, we still don't know exactly how much hydrocarbons is under the Eastern Med, but there's quite a bit of material, especially given the fact that Russia is now becoming a harder choice for Europeans to explore for the future security of oil and gas, especially gas in this case. I think there's more reason to use Eastern Mediterranean as a potential not to offset Russia, but augment some of the losses. And that makes Eastern Mediterranean a not only a sea of fear, but a sea of opportunity. There's also other positives. For example, there's a relation, Israel and Lebanon do not even have a official relationship. They're officially at war, if you would, but yet they're talking about their maritime with United States mediation on the maritime boundary. That is a big thing. It actually is bringing in the Lebanese on a very specific thing. Both countries have decided that they only will talk about that and nothing else. This is not recognition. This is not end of hostilities, all of that. But Hezbollah, we know, is major part of the realities in Lebanon, yet they're all there. So which means you can bring in peacemaking while countries are not at peace because there's a potential economic benefit. The other issue is the potential of bringing in Turkey to the gas forum. The gas forum, when it was the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum, which is based in Cairo, when it was formed, it was almost, whether it was formed to entice Turkey to come inside and join, or to tell Turkey that we can do it without you, Turkey saw it as the latter, that we can have these countries, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, the French, the Italians, and we can explore these seas you're alone. It did not work. Working to bring Turkey into this forum, I think, would also give Turkey, which is highly dependent on Russian oil, a choice. Don't forget where Turkey gets all its oil: Russia and Iran, and both of them are sanctioned. Turkey is the 15th largest economy in the world. They need to have commodities like oil and gas come into them. They have a lot of things going for them. That's not one of them. They don't have any indigenous capacities. Russians are building the nuclear plants, but that's right now kind of later. So to bring in Turkey as part of this maneuvering, there's another positive, is Turkey-Israel relationship. It's been on the highest levels, is moving towards the right direction. The way President Erdogan invited his counterpart, President Herzog of Israel, and the way he was treated here was unprecedented. He gave him as a red carpet as anybody has gotten. So there is a way to, they're trying to, there's no ambassador yet in Tel Aviv, but they have a DCM, and there's a lot of maneuvering going on. So with Israel coming in there again, because Israel has a lot of the chunk of that gas, working with Egypt, there's also the relationship between Egypt and Turkey are getting better. Not yet there. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and Turkey are getting better. relationship between the United Arab Emirates and Turkey are getting better. So there's those positives. Those were all countries that were kind of trying to be at the anti-Turkish bloc. Except Greece, all of them are now changing. UAE has changed officially. Saudi Arabia, the Prince Mohammed bin Salman will make a trip to Turkey very soon. He will go to Greece as well, which is showing that he's still balancing, but there are changes happening, which is positive. And these changes will also have a major impact on the geopolitical Eastern Mediterranean, not just the gas and oil, but the peace buildings. I see there's a positivity. What it needs is forward-looking, and again, in my view, making sure that Turkey is not seen always as a stumbling block, or, oh, what we're going to do with them. Because if we do that, it is a very large country with a very large economy and a large military. And let's not forget, while right now they're playing this balancing, and I'll end by that, with Russia and the West, they are West, but they're kind of working with Russia. That could shift fundamentally if they're pushed to a corner, and that's not going to be good for anybody. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I think that'll be a good place to pause for the episode. Maybe in a month or two, we'll sort of we'll have another episode and to assess how, let's say as we're getting to the 6-month anniversary of the conflict, how Russia's performance has shaped its ability to sustain its commitments in Syria, and what is, as we get further and further along, Russia as a global actor, how is it done well, done poorly, etc. But thank you. I also know that it's getting late for you guys in Athens. So thanks for coming on, and I'll turn it back over to Ian.
Thank you,
Brown, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Yuval, and thank you, Dr. Tarzi, and thank you, John, certainly for staying up late after a day of extended travel. And I'd be remiss if we didn't wish Dr. Tarzi an early happy birthday, which he'll be celebrating tomorrow, which is kind of why we wanted to talk to him tonight, just to make sure we could clear his schedule for appropriate celebrations tomorrow. And
they're in a different city, but Athens, I like the city, so and I have a companion, so
Make sure he's well taken care of.
it's always good to have a Liberty buddy. So it's I'm sure you guys will be just fine.
Safety
And,
first. Happy birthday.
Yes. And go ahead.
Sorry, as Dr. Weber mentioned about Syria, perhaps not now, in a couple of months or so, we have some very good meetings lined up in France as well, and here tomorrow. After this, when we kind of look at all of them, can discuss what is going on in that side of it. I think the French perspective may be important, because they're playing NATO-wise. They are becoming a major player. I mean, they were always there. That's where their major forces are all based, but the naval forces. But it's just to see their perspective of how they see this balancing in the future. We can do that some later time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, you got right. You were in my head, because I was about to say, when you all get back, we need to sit down and hear what you heard, right? So definitely we'll throw that on the schedule at your convenience, because I think you'll be back, and then we'll go into the 4th of July weekend. But as soon as we're all back together, back at work, definitely want to pick your brains and hear what you're out there for, because you haven't done the meetings yet. So when you do the meetings, let's find out what was going on there. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, great. So thank you, everybody. Hey, Yuval, always good to see you, and twice in a weekend is, it's not my birthday, but that's pretty good. So thank you all, gentlemen. Get yourself some sleep tonight, so you can go forth and execute these things with some sort of rest, as well as be rested for birthday celebrations tomorrow. And to our audience, as always, thank you for joining us. We're lucky we get to do a couple of these here back to back. Well, it certainly won't be probably the standard, but we like to get back into sort of a tempo of doing these more frequently. So this is a down payment on that. All right.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for
Good night.
our education, and we have Dr. Weber there. That's expanding our minds, because this is every day you hear one thing and you kind of put back your head and see why has this happened, and it's always good to discuss it and see where it is. But thank you, and we really say Kalinichta. Bye bye.
All right. Take care. Bye.